So in this video, I want to talk about a semi-controversial topic that has been going back and forth between the different generations. And that is really, did the older generation have it quote unquote easier? And speaking from someone who's 25, a lot of us in our 20s feel like we got dealt a bad hand, right? Maybe it's because of the fact that our parents or our grandparents were able to buy homes relatively easier in their 20s, or, our grandparents had one income and lived on, multiple acres of land and worked a factory job. And, now in 2025, a lot of 20-year-olds are lucky if they can even afford rent. Older generations, they had pensions, they had, clear retirement funds, and now people have side hustles, right? So did our parents have it easier? The honest answer in a lot of ways is, yeah, they did. But at the same time, that's not the whole story, right? A lot of them, they had stability while we have access. They had one clear path, right? We've got 1,000. As long as we're willing to build our own. In this video, I want to break down the real differences between our generation and theirs, the good, the bad, and what we actually can do to get what we want. And I first want to preface this video by saying, this is no shade towards any other generation, because I do think that a lot of people my age do say that, oh, the older generation had it so easy. To be honest, I don't agree with that at all. I think that there's differences in the generations. I think that they had certain things easier, but I also think that we have certain things easier too. So I'm going to kind of break down my opinion on this, where I stand on it, and just a few key things to keep in mind when people say this. So the first one is really just affordability and stability then and now. So I don't think anyone can dispute the fact that if you look at charts, right, especially since post-COVID, houses have become more unaffordable, right? Even if a house was less money in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the house price to income ratio was closer than it is now. And that's inexplicably, it's proven. You can look that up. So whether it's our parents or our grandparents, they could buy a house younger, often with one income, and they did have more job stability, pensions, linear career path, and the cost of living was lower overall. However, they didn't have the same access to information we do, right? So they used to have to go to the library and read a book to learn something, or they had to only go to school to land a decent job, or only go to this union paying school and things like that. Whereas now we have the whole entire internet. We have access to AI, access to the internet, and really quite frankly, infinite income potential and self-education. So we can build brands, businesses, or even remote careers from anywhere, and we're not locked into one path. Right. So that freedom can be overwhelming, but I just want to make that clear as well. People always say, oh yeah, our grandparents, they could afford tons of land and a house on one income. Yeah. Okay. That sounds amazing. And honestly, that does sound nice, but at the same time, they worked at a factory working 60 hours a week, and then they would come home and that was it. There was no internet side hustles. There was no remote work. You literally went to work and clocked in for 8 to 12 hours a day and came home. So could you afford houses easier? Yeah, but there's also more ways to make money now and actually give yourself more time in your day-to-day life. And I think the difference too is the mental load and pressure differences. So the social media comparison and the constant pressure to make it fast is kind of what also makes things worse. So there's less structure, there's more mental health struggles, and there's more economic uncertainty. So I feel back in the day, right, like I said, there was one clear path for our parents, right? It was you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, right? And you get a job. And you work that job for 30, 40 years, and then you retire. Whereas today, we live in this economy where things are faster. You're seeing a lot of freelance and gig type jobs. And you're seeing a lot of contract work as well. And there's not necessarily a path that's laid out for you. We were told growing up to still get good grades and go to college and things of that nature. But we've learned, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, that it's not always that straightforward. So they might have had stability, right? They might have had that that stability and that straightforward path, that we have opportunity, right? So our parents didn't necessarily have the same access to information and different options that we do. It's almost like they had a map, right? You go to college, get a job, buy a house, retire. That map doesn't necessarily work for us anymore in the same way. The terrain has changed. We don't get a map, but we do have a compass. And if you learn how to use it, right, you can use the internet, different skills you can learn. The leverage we now have, you can actually go further than the map ever allowed. So I think that is kind of, if I had to break it down, I do feel like that is pretty much what explains it, right? So I've heard this phrase before, but like the middle class, in my opinion, is dying. I do think in the next 10 years, you're going to see pretty much the middle class completely evaporate. And it's going to be more so like have-yachts and have-nots, right? So you're going to have people who the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And unfortunately, I'm definitely not rich yet, right? But I think that if we really focus on different ways to make money, income streams, investing smartly, and laying the groundwork now, we should be able to make it out the other side all right. And, it's hard sometimes to not get caught up or not get angry about the fact about, like the housing is so unaffordable and, the rent prices are going up and, jobs don't pay that well. Like, my only thing to that would be, yes, it does suck. It does suck how affordable housing or unaffordable housing has become. It does suck how, the job market can be at times. But I also think at the same time, it can be easier to stand out, right? Because especially with AI, especially with people just doing the bare minimum, right? They just send in their resume or they just, apply to a job and hope for the best. I think that a lot of people are lacking the ability to really show their value, show why they're different and stand out in the market, whether that's trying to find a job, starting a business, or starting anything in life. Like, you can go above and beyond and really wipe the floor against other people. So, like, to really wrap this up, I think our parents had more stability and a quote-unquote easier, straightforward path in terms of what to do. But we do have more of an infinite potential, freedom, and access to the internet and different income streams more than they had. And I think that's the difference of the game, where they, like, their lives, right? I think they had it easier on the mind, but harder on the body, right? A lot of them were doing factory jobs, mechanic jobs, like they would just clock into work, like bust their ass for hours and like their body would take a beating. Whereas my generation has it easier on the body, but harder on the mind and soul. So that's why you see a lot of people isolated. They don't have a lot of like close friends. There's not as like many social gatherings. You don't really see people congregating as much as you used to. And I do think that is actually like a big problem from a societal perspective. Like, back in the day, you had like your work, maybe you went to the gym, maybe, and then like you had like your school, but there was always like a place that like people would hang out. Like, maybe they would go to like those like local bars and like play some pool and stuff. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't happen anymore, but I will say post-COVID, like, that is not as common as it used to be. And I think the combination of like a lot of these white collar jobs, a lot of these remote jobs, and a lot of these things where even if you're working in the office, you can feel isolated, especially with like political divided, like politics dividing people, or a lot of this stuff too. I just feel like people are they have more friction to them. It's harder to like make a genuine connection than it used to be. And I do think that's why you see a lot of kids nowadays just, unfortunately, either taking their own life. Like, that's horrible to say, but that happens a lot now. And or just like mental health problems. And I think that if you're watching this and you're someone that feels isolated, or they feel like they have like certain mental health problems, like, go talk to someone. I actually have never went to like a therapist or anything like that, but like I've talked to like close friends that I trust a lot. I think it's, even if you have like a close friend or someone you could talk to, I'd recommend that. But yeah, guys, I think that's, at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to, right? You have to find ways to create different income streams for yourself, and also still make friends and socialize with other people, because there's, the world is a crazy place, and a lot of stuff has transpired over the last 10 years. So why would you hurt yourself by not socializing with others and not having a close circle of friends. It doesn't make sense. So to wrap this up, I'd say our parents did have it easier in some ways. But at the same time, I think we have something just as powerful, and that's the ability to write our own path or multiple paths. And stability is comfortable, but opportunity, that's limitless. So what do you guys think? Do you wish you were born in your parents' era? Do you wish you were born in the 50s, 60s, 70s? Or do you think our generation has something even better if we play it right? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your guys' take on that. Especially, I'm in the audience, there's people that are younger, there's people that are older. So especially if you're older, I'd love to hear your any advice or maybe your opinion on kind of like the things I said. But drop like I said, drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you're trying to build something real in this modern world, hit like and subscribe, and let's figure it out together. All right, peace, guys.